Hello, I'm Kang Jun, and I'll give a presentation of the US economy, tight monetary policy, why Fed chose it to cope with the US economy. Last year, I uploaded a current news studies about the United States inflation due to the outbreak of COVID-19 and supply chain crisis for the club activity. And I would introduce about the US inflation of 2022, which has been seriously increasing. First of all, the US have faced catastrophic inflation due to the inflation caused by COVID-19 and quantitative easing that the US has responded to the inflation and supply chain crisis between 2019 to 2021. As you can see in this graph, US is currently experiencing a 41-year high of 9.1% since the 1980s, according to the Consumer Production Index statistics. According to the data, the US monthly inflation index showed a steep increase in 2022 from May to June, with an increase about 1.3%. Judging that it is currently a problem with excess currency in the US market, the Federal Reserve intended to want to implement a tight monetary policy to stifle domestic inflation. The tightening monetary policy is a policy of a sharp drop in the amount of money released into market due to the quantitative easing and a policy of currencies to suppress overheated consumer sentiment. The Federal Reserve had taken a tough approach to inflation by applying a three-step policy of rising interest rates called the Big Step to increase the key interest rates about 0.75%. The Federal Open Market Committee, which is known as FOMC, reported that the US key interest rate reached 1.75 as of June, which would help reduce the country's overheated purchasing power. In addition to the interest rate hike, which is a typical example of tightening monetary policy, the reserve system can be expanded to increase the percentage of reserves required for each bank in the United States, or to reduce the amount of money by selling and purchasing US government bonds. Through above, the Fed continues its effort to reduce overheated consumer sentiment. On the point of Fed's monetary policy, there are some opinions that agree to lower inflation, but at the same time, there is also a negative assessment of the reason for the sharp decline in economic growth. I also thought that the Fed's policy has an inevitable disadvantage that it cannot provide much help to low-income and economically vulnerable persons or people who are already lived up hard in the wave of inflation. However, from a long-term perspective, I thought that the Fed's policy can help curb inflation and prevent inflation from spreading to the international economy. The presentation has ended. Thanks for listening.